Hey, good morning. Tweed Jefferson here. I want to talk today about being an adult on the autism spectrum. So I want to start by saying that, like, up until about 4 years ago or so, like, I didn't really have any knowledge at all about autism spectrum disorder, aside from like movies like Rain Man and doing some learning about people like Kim Peek and people who are known specifically for their autism. Uh, I That's all I knew really, and I was learning about children with autism and trying to start like a after school program for those children at the time. I'll talk more about my nonprofit programs that I've wanted to start in a future video. And one of the reasons that I haven't started them is because I have a hard time putting myself out there, which is like what I'm doing with these videos actually is learning how to do that a little bit more. But anyway, so I didn't really know anything about it, and I started watching the show Community. My brother turned me on to that show, and if you've watched that show, you know about Abed, and I'm even wearing my Greendale college shirt today. Um, and I was like, wow, I relate to this character way too much. And so I began looking into it, doing the online tests, yada, yada, yada. And, turns out I scored pretty high on those tests. Um, and my, I wasn't until just, you know, 6, 8 months ago or so, I was diagnosed by a psychologist. I haven't had the neurological tests done. I mean, it seems kind of pointless. It costs a lot of money, and um, there's no treatment for autism spectrum disorder, if you want to call it a disorder. So, what's the point really? You just live your life. I have become far more accepting of who I am once knowing this about myself, because before I always felt just like an outcast and weird and everything else. And I mean, when I was a kid, you know, back in my day when we had to walk 20 miles uphill in the snow to school both ways, I mean, we didn't really like know about autistic kids. You were just the weird kid or whatever, right? And I even asked my mom at one point, like, how come you never, got me tested or diagnosed or anything like that? And she said, well, you seem normal, you talked at a normal time and walked at a normal time and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, even if I seemed normal, I never felt normal. And I gotta say, my masking game is Olympian level. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, growing up, I was told that what I was doing or how I was acting or whatever was wrong or weird or don't do that or that sort of thing. So I learned from an early age and throughout my entire adulthood how to mask effectively. Um, so anyway, if you've watched my previous videos, I kind of have some memory problems going on right now with my medical condition. So I apologize if I kind of trail off or forget what I'm saying at some points. Anyway, so I wanted to first, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take the online AQ test. It's 50 questions. And as I take it, I'm going to just kind of talk about how I relate to some of those things. So, first of all, here's a meme for you guys. And Um, you know, I don't go around telling people that I'm autistic or anything like that, or Asperger's, or on the spectrum, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I don't really like all the labels that go with it anyway, but I will say that the few times that I have mentioned it, I've got a lot of these kind of responses from people. So if you've heard this kind of thing, even if you're not diagnosed or anything like that, it's I guess normal to hear these kinds of things from people, and to then withdraw yourself because of it. Being invalidated tends to make us not want to share. And one of the purposes of all these videos talking about my mental, physical, everything else health is I'm sharing things with the world that I have never been comfortable sharing before, including with my family, with psychiatrists or psychologists or therapists or whatever. Um, I've been invalidated across the board. And um, so I've mentioned before in my videos, if you're feeling any of this kind of stuff, I'm always open to one-on-one chats, text, email, Zoom, whatever. I don't believe in invalidation. When I say I don't believe in it, I mean, obviously I believe it exists, but, statements like get over it, or, um, if you're feeling depressed or suicidal, saying you have so much to live for, or it'll get better, or whatever, those aren't the kinds of things that I like to say or hear. And I think it's more important just to listen to people, to share our own experiences, um, offer advice if it's wanted, um, or whatever. So, anyway, the other thing I'm going to share real quick before I take this test is I took the, I don't know, spectral test a while back. The test I'm going to take today is not going to give these kinds of results, but, let me pop this up real quick. So, this kind of shows where I am with the different parts of the spectrum, I guess. Um, so you can see that, like, some things like fixations and eye contact, social difficulty, I score higher on, whereas things like aggression and posture, I don't score so high on. And a lot of this too is learned. I mean, like, I've spent a lot of time like training in martial arts and what have you, and that's taught me a lot about how to move my body and that sort of thing. So I've learned. I mean, all this is kind of learned in a way. I think that I'll discuss it more as I take the tests. But being told don't do this or don't do that or think this or feel that is going to maybe make you do things differently, even if they don't feel natural to you. And that's one thing. I've felt unnatural for my entire life. And one of my buddies, who's about my same age, and by the way, I'm going to be 40 this year. So, I was 35 when I learned about even the possibility that I might be on the spectrum. Um, but I have a friend who he and I have a lot in common, and he kind of made the same discovery at the same time. So it gave us a lot to talk about. And I had always noticed in him that, he's an engineer, and he's fortunate he gets to do something he loves for work. But whenever we talk about something, he'd go on a half hour or an hour discussion about how to better engineer things, which I appreciate because I like to always try to find the way how to do things better. Um, but it was always interesting to see that. Anyway, let me drop this down and pull up this. I don't know if you could see that or not. Hopefully you can. I'm gonna see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Oops. I don't want to block myself out here as I'm doing it. Okay, so this is your standard AQ test. This is on psychologytools.com, and it's basically the same questions that any psychologist would ask you or whatever, um, to determine the possibility of you being on the spectrum. And again, there's, other tests, neurological tests and that sort of thing, but unless you have great health insurance or you want to shell out a bunch of money, I personally don't see the point. And honestly, even if you don't get a diagnosis from a psychologist or what have you, like I did, I mean, there's no invalidating that your self diagnosis, in my opinion. Like, if you relate to this stuff, you relate to this stuff. And its purpose should be to give you a better understanding of yourself versus like a crutch. I mean, I have difficulties with some things, but other things I excel at. So, I think take advantage of what I excel at and be proud of that. And anyway, I'll talk more as I go through the test. So, the first question, I prefer to do things with others rather than on my own. And so we've got in the columns here, we've got definitely agree, slightly disagree, and definitely disagree. So personally, I'm going to go with definitely disagree. And I'll say right now, before I get my results here, I take this test about every year since I've learned about the autism spectrum, and I tend to score about the same, which is about 40, 41 every time. So just goes to show you that my results tend to be consistent, and 40 would be considered high. Well, we'll see when we get the results. It'll give an explanation. So I prefer to do things with others rather than on my own. No, I prefer to do things by myself, although I do make the mistake a lot of times of kind of depending on others, like especially as a musician and that sort of thing, to, when you're doing a band or a musical project, you got to work with other people a lot. I mean, you don't have to. Last year I did an album almost entirely by myself, with the exception of a few guest musicians, a singer, a trumpet player, that sort of thing. My buddy played drums on a lot of the tracks. But music is one of those things that is a special skill for me. So I have learned how to play dozens of instruments, and now I can make albums on my own. I still can't really go play gigs on my own, but I don't really like playing gigs anyway, even though I did 200 plus shows a year for years and years. I never really enjoyed it. It was one of those things I kind of did just to be able to play music with other people. Personally, I'd rather be in the studio all the time, even in the rehearsal space. Anyway, number 2, I prefer to do things the same way over and over again. I'm going to go with slightly disagree on this, or actually, slightly agree. And the reason why is because I'm always open to learning how to do things a new and better way. However, when I learn a way that works, I like to do it the same way all the time because I find it effective. Like when you find the best technique for something, stick with it, but also be open to adaptation and change, right? 3, if I try to imagine something, I find it very easy to create a picture in my mind. So I'm going to go with these definitely disagree on that. I'm mostly aphantasic. Is that how you say that word? I don't picture things in my mind. I see things in words a lot of times. And this is reflected in my writing. When I write a book, I have to go back for my, revisions and tell myself, be more descriptive, because most of my writing is based on my internal monologue, or my narrator's internal monologue. Excuse me. Funny thing is, though, like, I deal with a lot of suicidal thoughts, and that's one of the things that I do picture in my mind visually. But other things, I have a really hard time picturing in my mind. I can't picture people's faces in my mind, even if it's someone I know well, have known for a long time. Right now, if I were to try to think about what my mom looks like or what my brother looks like or something like that, I can't do it. I know certain features, their haircut and that sort of thing, their body type, but I can't picture them in my mind. So, number 4, I frequently get so strongly absorbed in one thing that I lose sight of other things. I would go strongly or definitely agree on that one. I have a history of, you know, obsessing about my interests. So, when I was training in martial arts, I didn't just go and do 2 lessons a week. I trained every single lesson that the dojo offered, which was 18 lessons a week, plus many hours at home on my own. Same when I'm working on music, when I'm working on my album, uh, I would spend 10, 12, 14 plus hours a day sitting right here in this chair, uh, working on that kind of stuff with only breaks to pee, not eating sometimes or taking breaks or anything like that. Um, so yeah, I definitely get absorbed in things. I often notice small sounds when others do not. I would definitely agree with that. Echolalia is a thing I also do. So I tend to repeat sounds that I hear. I repeat the sounds that my dogs make or my chickens make or, you know, sounds around the house. If I make noises, I can repeat those noises and that sort of thing, which I think is sometimes kind of interesting that I do that. I also notice things like 40 and 60 cycle hum, which is the hum that your electronics or your lights might make. Um, you know, like I I can hear my lights on even right now. So number 6, I usually notice car number plates or similar strings of information. I would strongly agree with that as well. I tend to repeat those things, and I also try to make word games out of them. So, when I see a license plate, I'll make um, a initialism or an acronym out of the words on the plate. And usually I try not to even make silly ones, but, actual acronyms that exist in the real world or initialisms. And long strings of numbers are easy for me when I used to be a 911 dispatcher or when I managed different companies. Like memorizing 10-digit phone numbers as people said them was super easy for me. So, yeah, numbers and patterns and stuff, I definitely, I would say, excel at, if you want to call it that. Other people frequently tell me that what I've said is impolite, even though I think it's polite. Um, I guess I would slightly agree with this. Like, people don't often tell me that, although I often feel that way, maybe based on their reaction or what have you. I, again, my masking game is pretty high, so I tend to not talk a lot. I'm heavily introverted, and I try to be super polite to people, mostly by doing things that I've learned. I also don't really have a lot of malice, so I don't say things intentionally to be impolite. But I can see how, um, my honesty comes across that way. And I especially notice that people don't get my wry sense of humor or um, sometimes don't follow along with the stories I'm telling or what I'm saying because a lot of times I don't provide all of the information in my head or good context for it. So, when I'm reading a story, I can easily imagine what the characters might look like. Nope, not at all. Which, whatever. Sometimes I think it's good to like watch movie or TV adaptations of books, and other times I don't because, um, there's a good example. What did I read recently? I read, oh, I can't remember the name of it. It is the Ian Reid novel, but um, it wasn't like the way that the characters were described in the book, even though I wasn't like picturing them when I saw the movie, I was like, well, that's doesn't seem right to how I read the book. But I mean, that also comes down to casting and directors and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, there's books I've read dozens of times, like Haunted, for example, that unless the character's explicitly described, I can't really picture him. I mean, I think of like Saint Gutfrey, and I mean, I know he's skinny and waif like, but otherwise, I can't picture anything else about him. Um, I'm fascinated by dates, yes, along with the numbers. I mean, any string of numbers. I like to know the dates of historical events. I really like history, and I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I got to be able to cite every date of everything that ever happened, but I do like dates, and I like to also compare them, like what's happening in the world in Japan at this date versus what's happening in the Middle East versus what's happening in Eastern Europe, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so that part's interesting. I'm definitely not one of those people who like remembers the weather on every day of the year. Again, that goes with the, autistic savant or idiot savant, as they used to call it, which, although I have a lot of talents, I don't necessarily find that I am one of those people. In a social group, I can easily keep track of several different people's conversations. Definitely disagree there. I have a hard time with one conversation if there's any background noise going on. So, like, if there's music happening and its volume is above a whisper, I have a hard time with conversation, period. So, I find social situations easy. No. I find social situations incredibly difficult. I am extremely introverted, and I do masks, so I try to fit in. And for many years, well over a decade, I was only able to cope with social situations by drinking excessively. And so now I don't drink really hardly at all anymore, and social situations are really difficult. If you watched yesterday's video, you know I went to a memorial service and I spent the entire time outside by myself watching and listening through the doorway because I just cannot handle being in large groups like that. So, 12, I tend to notice details that others do not. Yes, I strongly agree with that. I'm very detail oriented. I like organization. I like, a good example I think is watching movies. Like, I think a lot of people watch movies to enjoy the story or what have you. And I watch movies and pay attention to things like the production design and the lighting and the way the music works with it. And I always thought that production designer would be a great job for me because when I watch movies, I notice historical inaccuracies and continuity errors and that sort of thing. Those things just jump out at me. So, yeah, very detail oriented in that respect. I would rather go to the library than a party. Yes, absolutely. Anywhere quiet, anywhere I can learn. I mean, learning is my number one thing. I do have special interests that I've had for a long time, but my real special interest is learning. And I'm always reading, I'm always watching educational videos. I want to know everything all the time. Obviously, I know I can't, but um, it's nice to have all this information at our fingertips, that's for sure. I find making up stories easy. Nope, I don't. Although I'm a writer, so the funny thing is, I guess, I don't know if it's funny, but I have always written as kind of a hobby. And it wasn't until, about a year and a half ago when I started working on my first book. I've written 6 books in the last year that I took the old generic cliche advice of write what you know. And when I started writing what I knew, writing became easy for me. My first book was about 911 dispatching, and I um, did that. I trained other dispatchers, and I noticed when I started doing it a complete lack of educational material for that vocation. Like, aside from the textbook that you get when you become a dispatcher, which you can't buy unless you're a dispatcher, there's no materials available for that. Like, you can buy books of dispatchers telling their stories, but no actual like how to get the job, how to take the test, how to do the interviews. So I wrote a book about that, as well as sharing some of my philosophies like Zen and Aikido and how they apply to the job of dispatching. My second book was how to be a do-it-yourself musician, something I've done for 20 years. And then when I started writing novels, the Rockstar Nobody series, I based almost everything in the stories, minus the serial killing part, on my actual experiences. The tours and the gigs I've really been on, the musicians I've actually played with. So I'm not really making anything up. I'm talking about what I know and then maybe exaggerating things a little bit to make it more interesting to the storytelling and cutting out the boring stuff, you know. No one wants to hear about the 12 hours you spend driving around. So, yeah, making up stories, not so easy for me. I find myself drawn more strongly to people than things. I would disagree with that. Also, I'm not a materialistic person at all. I try to live a minimalistic lifestyle despite what I'll use this hand. The bookshelf behind me says these are all my things that inspire me and that I'm interested in. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Otherwise, if you went around my house, you'd see that there's very little in the way of things. I'll do a tour of my house and property one of these days because I really love where I'm at in the mountains up here and everything. And but like connecting with people is incredibly difficult with me. But you know, things like my guitars here, for example, are something I feel connected to. I guess if you want to call it connected, I don't know what you'd call it. Uh, Something I find easy, I guess. Number 16, I tend to have very strong interests, which I get upset if I can't pursue. I think we've talked about that a little bit, but yeah, my goal every day in my life is to pursue my interests, to constantly be learning. So I'm always wanting to do those. I mean, lately I've been doing a lot of gardening. I love gardening. Um, I haven't been doing a lot of music lately, but you know that comes and goes. Once I finished my album, it was hard to keep doing that because I'm not a big songwriter. I'm a composer, so unless I have songs, there's not a lot of work to do. As far as getting upset if I can't pursue them, I try to be adaptive to things, but I will say that like when I have plans to work on my garden or my music or my writing and someone interrupts them, that can ruin my day for sure. I enjoy social chit chat, absolutely not. Um, Anything social is hard for me, but small talk is the worst. Like, I feel uncomfortable doing it, and I don't like talking about mundane things. You know, using the memorial yesterday or any family gathering I go to, holidays or whatever. Like, the idea of like having the same, you know, 20 sentence conversation with 40 different people is just like, I don't know, seems so pointless. And I try to be polite and do it anyway, but like, why? I mean, I don't know. But then again, most of those people can't have civil discourse on thoughtful conversations because they're so set in their ways that they're not willing to listen. Like the idea of talking to people in my family about politics or religion is just off the table for me because I'm open minded in those things and I like to study all sides as it would be. You know, if one of the shelves behind me, actually the one that's blocked by this window right here, is all philosophy books, everything from the Bible to the Quran to Bhagavad Gita and all that. Whereas most of my family is hardcore dogmatic Christian, and like dogma is not something I do. I do thoughtful, uh, insightful kind of pursuit of things like that. Same goes for politics. You know, I want to talk about politics a lot, but only from a theoretical or philosophical standpoint. Like the idea that I'm going to argue with you about which politician is better than this politician, or that sort of thing is just stupid to me because honestly, all politicians are kind of crap in my opinion because they're not coming up with thoughtful, creative solutions to problems. They're not serving everybody equally. And I don't know. I mean, I'm going to talk about my thoughts about politics in depth in a future video. I've always wanted to get into politics, but because I'm not the social person, because I don't blow smoke up people's asses, um, because I don't smile for cameras and kiss babies or whatever, that's, I mean, I stand very little chance of success in that department, right? Anyway, um, when I talk, it isn't always easy for others to get a word in edgewise. Um, I would say no. And what they're getting at here is a lot of times when people on the spectrum talk about things, especially their interests, they don't listen or have a conversation about it. And a good example of that is I used to go to the archery range every day, and there was a guy that was always down there about the same time as me, and he was on the spectrum, and he was really into his longbow shooting. And anyone who came in there, he'd give them like a 15 or 20-minute story about the longbow. And I could just see these people's eyes just glaze over as he's talking about it. And I think I'm just hyper aware of all that kind of stuff, um, that always wanted to be polite to other people. Hold on, my dogs are barking. So, I'm hyper aware of that kind of thing and not wanting to make people feel uncomfortable and, always being shamed in the past for doing what was natural to me. I'm I'm very apprehensive about doing or saying anything that's gonna cause any kind of conflict. So I'd say that doesn't really apply to me. I'm fascinated by numbers. So about half the questions on this test, by the way, are going to be kind of reworded, repeat questions of what they've already asked. So when I get those questions, I'll just read them, answer them, and go past. So when reading a story, I find it difficult to work out the character's intentions. I would say that I slightly agree with that. I can read into intentions pretty good, way better than I can picture things, that's for sure. Same with people, although with people, so I can read people pretty well, I would say. But on the other hand, I don't always go with my gut, or I give people the benefit of the doubt, which has caused me to be taken advantage of way more times than I'd like to admit. And it continues to happen. Here I am almost 40 and still letting people take advantage of me because I can't set good boundaries or I can't trust my gut feeling about them. Even if it's not a gut feeling, this one guy I used to play music with, I played with him for years, and I knew he wasn't a good dude. He'd talk about how he'd screw over his clients, and he'd always be cheating on his wife and stuff like that. Yet, it's like, I knew that he'd do it to me eventually, but I guess I was just waiting for him to actually do it, and he did. So, whatever. I'd say live and learn, but I don't particularly enjoy reading fiction. I agree with that. I read about 50 books a year, or I try to, and I'd say maybe two or three of them are fiction. I don't like science fiction or fantasy or that kind of thing, particularly when I do read fiction. I like realistic fiction. My favorite author is Chuck Palahniuk. And aside from like Rant, which is kind of weird and time travel-y, I mean, most of his stuff is kind of realistic. Mental health stuff and that sort of thing. American Psycho is another book that I find to be very realistic and I enjoy. I also like how the author goes, really is kind of stream of consciousness and that sort of thing. I find it hard to make new friends, absolutely. I admire people who can put themselves out there and make friends. Although, one of the best compliments I ever received in my life was from my buddy Chris, who said, you're the most genuine person I've ever met in my life. And I can appreciate that. There's people like my uncle, for example. He'll make friends with the person standing next to him in the line for coffee. I've seen it happen. And there's another guy who I've known most of my life. Most of my life. He's the husband of a longtime family friend. Also, always making friends with everyone he talks to. But I can always see the ulterior motive when these people are doing it. Like my uncle's always wanting to like push people over to his religion, including me, which I mean, he knows how I feel about that kind of stuff. And this other guy is always like, he'll ask you a question, wait for you to answer, and then use it as a catalyst to talk about his own thing that he's trying to sell or market or whatever. Always trying to get people to invest in his new scheme and that sort of thing. So it's like, I don't know. I'd rather be genuine than friendly. I'm polite, I'm kind, but I would definitely not call myself friendly. I notice patterns and things all the time. Yes, absolutely. Patterns in everything all the time. Everything. And I like it. I find one of the things I find funny actually is when I'm in a public restroom and I have a hard time peeing because of stage fright or whatever else. Noticing patterns in like the tile on the wall helps me go. So there you go. But yeah, I love patterns and organization. I'd rather go to the theater than a museum. No, I like museums. Um, I like the theater too. I love musical theater and production. And again, it's one of those things that I watch not for the enjoyment because I like to watch choreography and set design and lighting design and all that kind of stuff. And, when I used to play music all the time, I'd go out to gigs, and I'm one of those people who stands in the back corner and watches what's going on stage. I don't dance or sing along or anything like that. I just like to watch, observe. Um, but, museums are quiet and I can learn things. So, I mean, I believe I can learn things in anything. I even watched Jersey Shore because it's interesting to learn how things are. So, how people are. I'm fascinated by human behavior, including my own. It does not upset me if my daily routine is disturbed. Definitely disagree. I make lots of lists and I like to stick to them. I like to make goals. And when people come out of the blue and want me to do something, my ex wife used to do this all the time. It would be very upsetting. And the other thing that drives me nuts too is when people make plans with me and then they like don't keep on a schedule. Like, my neighbor is notorious for this, wanting help with something or wanting to hang out. And then, like, I'm sitting around waiting for hours, like, okay, well, I thought we were supposed to do this thing at 7 or whatever, and here it is 9 o'clock, and I haven't heard from you. And it's like, oh, sorry, I got busy doing something else. And it's like, well, A, thanks for letting me know so I could do other projects because I don't want to start something and then get interrupted. And I don't know. I just think it's rude. Like, I'm one of those early is on time and on time is late people. So if I make plans with you, I'll be there and I'll be there 15 minutes early kind of thing. And I don't know. It's respect. I don't know why people can't be more respectful of each other's time. I frequently find that I don't know how to keep a conversation going. Yeah, absolutely. If I'm trying to keep a conversation going, I find myself resorting to generic questions. I definitely find it hard to ask questions that I actually want to know the answers to, or that I, show genuine interest in other people because I'm so afraid of offending someone or creating conflict. So, anyway, I find it easy to read between the lines when someone is talking to me. No, I take things at face value. I'm a very literal person. Um, I say what I mean, and a lot of times people like are trying to think I have ulterior motives, which I kind of find offensive because when I say something, I mean something. And I'm all about, hardcore honesty. And if I'm not going to be honest, I'd rather just keep my damn mouth shut. Uh, I usually concentrate more on the whole picture rather than on small details. No, I'm a detail person. I mean, I like to think about the whole picture, but I like to break things into manageable chunks and think about how to accomplish a goal by focusing on the details for sure. I'm not very good at remembering phone numbers. Disagree. We already talked about that. I can remember 10, 12 digits, no problem. I usually don't notice small changes in a situation or a person's appearance. Slightly disagree. See, some of these questions are like, if you came into my house and you were to move one of the books on my shelf behind me, or, something in my refrigerator, I would definitely notice that. I'd notice it in a second. But people's appearances, maybe not so much. I don't look people in the face or in the eye a lot of times. So, if you are wearing different makeup or that sort of thing, I'm probably not going to notice. I don't know how to tell if someone listening to me is getting bored. I'd say slightly agree to that. And only because, like I said before, I'm hypersensitive to that sort of thing and being polite and making people feel comfortable. Although, when I go on topics that I have an interest in, I have a hard time with it. Like my ex-wife asked me one time. I was talking about I was producing her podcasts, and I mentioned compression, and she said, "What's compression?" And here goes me on a 15-minute explanation about what compression does, and obviously she didn't need that explanation nor want it, but you know that's how I am. When I took music business class in college, I remember the first assignment that we got was to explain the four business roles in music, the producer, the agent, the manager, the business manager. And the instructor was like, give me at least 1,000 words on this. So I wrote 10,000 words on it. He wrote me back and, A plus kind of thing, and also said, please don't ever do that again, because he didn't want to read that much information. And even though my explanation was great, it probably wasn't so interesting. And again, that's me focusing on the details of things. So, number 32. I find it easy to do more than one thing at once. Um, I don't know. Slightly disagree on this one, I guess. Like when I'm doing a particular task, I want to really focus on it, and I like it's a Zen thing for me too, to focus on what I'm doing, even if it's washing the dishes or working in the garden. I like to focus on one thing at once. However, um, like as a 911 dispatcher or, doing office jobs before, I found it very easy to talk on the phone about one thing and type about another thing, and maybe even do a third thing, like, um, have a conversation with a coworker at the same time, or listen to, and in dispatch, there's a lot of things going on, and you're talking to someone on the phone, and you're typing in notes to the ambulance crew, and I might be helping out the person sitting next to me, because at least in my case, I did a lot of studying on emergency medicine, and so I was kind of the go-to person of like, hey, what's this mean? Or hey, what's that mean? When it came to medical terms or that sort of thing. And I'd kind of listen for that in the room at the same time. So in that respect, I found that sort of thing easy. But I do like to focus on what I'm doing. When I talk on the phone, I'm not sure when it's my turn to speak. Absolutely. I hate the phone. I like texting. It gives good space for conversation, the ability to think about what you say before you say it. And yeah, I don't know when someone's done talking a lot of times, and that's not just on the phone. So I enjoy doing things spontaneously. Absolutely not. Spontaneity is not my thing. I leave myself a little bit of planned spontaneity in my days. Like, hey, maybe I'll feel like working on my trumpet playing today, or, doing that sort of thing that I don't actually plan out, but it is planned spontaneity. Like for me, going on a trip, for example, is like, let me plan out every single stop and how long it's going to take and where we're going to eat. And I'll look at the menu ahead of time and so on and so forth. And I don't know, it makes it more enjoyable to me and a lot less stress. So, yeah, spontaneity, not really my thing for sure. I'm often the last to understand the point of a joke. See, that's another hard one. I'll say slightly disagree, maybe slightly agree. Um, I listen to a lot of comedy. I get it. Like, especially the stuff I like to listen to. I understand double and triple entendres. You know, that's my favorite kind of comedy. Bo Burnham and stuff like that. Um, People with really highbrow jokes, I enjoy. Whereas, and this is where it's like, what do you mean by the point of a joke? Because a lot of times people joke around, and I'm like, well, I mean, I get that you're joking, and I get the point, I guess, of the joke, but like, I don't get the point of why you're making that joke or why it's funny to you or whatever. You know, people who that's what she said anytime someone says the word hard or whatever, and you know, fart jokes and dick jokes and stuff like that. It's like I don't know. It's not funny. So what's the point, you know? Anyway, so the wording of these questions sometimes is hard for me. I find it easy to work out what someone is thinking or feeling just by looking at their face. Absolutely not. I'm terrible with facial expressions. Um, I've learned some of it absolutely by experiencing it many times, especially people I know and I've seen them be happy or sad or angry or everything else. Like, and I kind of memorized that sort of thing, but um, extrapolating that in general, no, not good at. If there is an interruption, I can switch back to what I was doing very quickly. You know, I used to be better at that. Say slightly disagree, but I've gotten worse at it more recently. That might have to do with my. Excuse me, I'm talking too much. I'm running out of air. Um, yeah, maybe it's my memory issues and that sort of thing that makes it hard for me to switch back to what I was doing. I take a lot of notes all the time in conversation, like business conversation, obviously not just personal chit chat if I'm ever having that. Um, with what I'm doing all the time, I mean, my house and counters and desk are filled with these and notebooks everywhere. I mean, I keep track of things like that so I can kind of get back on track. I'm good at social chit chat. What? Kind of the same question, I guess. Definitely disagree. People often tell me that I keep going on about the same thing. So again, like here I am going on and on about something. People don't often tell me that, but I guess maybe that's because I don't talk to a lot of people about things like that. I tend to keep my personal interests, my special interests kind of private, and I keep my personal thoughts private. And like I said before, I don't talk about things that really interest me, politics, religion, speculative stuff, philosophical stuff. I just don't talk about that with people unless I already know them. I'm already comfortable with them, and I feel like they're a non-judgmental person. Which right now, I don't have many of those people in my life. I recently reconnected with an old friend who I can kind of talk to like that, and it's been very nice. But yeah, family and that sort of thing absolutely cannot like talk about what I think and feel, so I don't. When I was young, I used to enjoy playing games involving pretending with other people. Not really. I was never really a pretender. Um, my escapism as a child was always in video games. So I like to collect information about categories of things, e.g., types of cars, birds, trains, plants. Definitely agree. So this one over this shoulder, this shelf right here, is all books about Japanese martial arts. And my books are organized by category. The one above, let's see, sorry, I'm backwards. This is all about sushi and Japanese cooking. So, yeah, I have very particular interests and I like lots of information about it. Um, the top left on your screen is all guitar books, and that used to be about 10 times as many books, but um, I got rid of a lot. I give away books, a lot. So I find it difficult to imagine what it would be like to be someone else. Yes, I would say I'm a very empathetic person, in general, but I don't picture myself in other lives a lot of times. Um, and I don't picture myself in a lot of things a lot of times. So, um, and empathy is another thing that's weird for me. Like direct empathy, I have a hard time with, but indirect empathy, like I sometimes think about and get very sad about like all the people who are suffering with depression, suicide, addiction, and that sort of thing. Especially like those people who have so much to give and offer. And of course, a lot of times, I think Robin Williams said the saddest people are the ones that, want to give the most joy, something like that. Because, all these musicians, Chris Cornell and that sort of thing, I've thought about recently. And it just makes me sad to think about like how amazing these people are and how much they're suffering inside. I guess I can relate to it too. Um, so anyway, number 43. We're almost done here, guys. I know this is a long video. As always, I say I'm not going to talk forever, and I do. Number 43. I like to carefully plan any activities I participate in. That's a yes here. Hard yes. I already talked about that. Number 44. I enjoy social occasions. No, I hate them. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but so my family has 2 or 3 social gatherings a month. COVID be damned. Birthday parties, baby gender reveal parties, all that kind of thing, and I don't go to them. They make me very uncomfortable. And like I said about also just the same old small talk with the same people, drives me nuts. And maybe I'd connect with them more if I saw them more, but at the same time, like a lot of these people I have talked to enough to know that I don't want to connect with them more. So, social stuff I don't enjoy. I usually, at this point, now that I'm more accepting of that in myself, I go to 3 or 4 a year, the big ones. I went to that memorial yesterday. I'll go to a wedding. I'll go to Christmas. But I try to stay away from it just because it sucks the life out of me. Literally sucks the life out of me. Like, this last week or so has been like the best week in years for me, a couple years at least, as far as feeling peaceful, feeling positive, having a lot of energy to do things. And I went to this memorial yesterday, and by the time I left, I was just like, 2 hours. And mind you, like I said, I stood outside most of the time and avoided people, but still sucked the life out of me just being in that environment. So there's that. 45. I find it difficult to work out other people's intentions. Again, they keep asking these. 46. New situations make me anxious. I would say strongly agree because I think what they're getting at here is new places and social situations and stuff. Like, it makes me, I have a lot of social anxiety. But at the same time, like, I have no anxiety about trying new things. I'll pick up a new instrument. I'll try a new hobby. I'll learn something new. I'll try a new recipe in the kitchen. Um, any of that stuff. Like, I'm not afraid to be bad at something to learn it. So, but like I said, I think what they're getting at here is like social situations or going to a new store you've never been to. I try to shop at the same stores all the time and everything. Find a place that works for me and I'll just do that. 47, and I enjoy meeting new people. I absolutely do not enjoy meeting new people. I enjoy learning about new people. I, really like to connect with people when I can, but because I don't connect with people a lot of times, meeting them, small talk, getting the old sales pitch is not enjoyable for me at all. I'm a good diplomat. I would say, yeah. I mean, okay, so I'm very even keeled. I like to look at all sides of the situation. Um, I like to be logical and not emotional in my responses to things. But when it comes to being a diplomat, I mean, it goes to that social thing. Like, I don't put myself out there. I don't say that sort of thing or whatever. When I was in an old rock band, the drummer would call me, sometimes he'd call me Switzerland, because when they'd be having some tiffs in the band, I'd be the guy that would be neutral and trying to find a solution. So, you know, I don't know. Some of these questions like offer some room for interpretation. I'm not very good at remembering people's date of birth. No, I remember that kind of stuff. I'm not very good about celebrating people's birthdays or reaching out to them, but I often remember. I, I think Facebook does that for us now, anyways. I find it very easy to play games with children that involve pretending. Not really. No, I'm not a pretender person. I like to talk to children, and I've gotten myself, I find children very hard to be around, and not because they're children. I love talking to children and hearing their perspective on things and being open and honest with them. And, it always broke my heart that I never kind of got to be a father to my son because his mom and my mom always berated me for being too open and honest with him and not like shielding him from the world and lying about everything all the time. And so I think that it's not like that I have a difficult time with children. I have a difficult time with parents. So anyway, that's all 50. Let's see where I scored here. Oh shit. 47 out of 50. So that's actually the highest I've ever scored on this test. Like I said, normally I score around 40, 41-ish. So scores of 33 to 50 range indicates significant autistic traits, parenthesis autism. So, you know, nothing we didn't know there already, but surprised it didn't ask anything about eye contact and stuff on that one. Anyway, if you're, relate to anything I had to say here today, feel free to take this test yourself. Talk to your therapist or whatever about it. I mean, a therapist isn't the greatest person to talk about, maybe. Just so everyone's aware, therapist is a very broad term. I can call myself a therapist. There's no governing body for therapists or anything like that. So if you want to say, "Oh, I'm a therapist," well, guess what? You are a therapist. Um, obviously, psychologists and psychiatrists and stuff like that are are governed and have to actually have education and that sort of thing. But um, you know, be cautious and with therapists and take them with a grain of salt because I've had a lot of bad results with therapists. Um, everything from just giving the mundane textbook kind of questions and answers, which is not helpful to me because um, I read all those books myself, and I have the same access to all the medical journals and everything else that anyone else does, and I'm probably more interested in it than a lot of therapists and even doctors. Um, because I actually enjoy that kind of stuff. It's not one of those things that like, oh, I'm gonna be a psychiatrist because I want to make a lot of money. Like I study psychiatry and psychology because it's actually interesting to me, and I have no intentions of ever going into those fields. You know, and when I get into politics in my videos, I'll talk more about how I went to school for political science, and then after doing that and observing the way people talk about politics, I realized I have no intention of getting into politics. I really never did at the time. I actually wanted to be a fact checker and an analyst for, political TV shows. But then even the TV shows are so like one-sided and everything that I just didn't agree with it, even if I believed in certain things that a show said, I just don't believe in being dishonest and not um, talking about all the issues if they don't suit your cause or your motivation. Which again is why I'll probably never get into politics because I'm not going to pander to one audience or the other. I'm not going to say I'm Republican or Democrat, so let me pander to these people because I'm not, and I won't. Um, anyway, maybe people will start to see that, and I can get into politics because I think I have a lot to offer in that department. But I guess that's all I'm going to talk about today. I just wanted to go over that test and see how everyone kind of related to it. I know I don't have a lot of viewers yet, but I'm just putting myself out there. And again, if you're feeling any of these things or depressed or suicidal or anything like that, I'm always open to talk. You know, my therapy door is always open because hey, who isn't a therapist nowadays? I've kind of been a de facto therapist for a long time to a lot of friends and stuff just because of my demeanor. Um, my friend the other day told me I have a very calming presence, which I appreciate. I've been told that many, many times before, and it's funny to feel so much inner turmoil, but to project calm to other people. So I'm here, I'm listening, and I have this link on the bottom of the screen here. I'm trying this new site out, the Patron site, because I know a lot of my friends and family and followers won't necessarily buy or read my books or listen to my album or anything. And this is an interesting way that I really appreciate to support independent artists because you could just make a monthly pledge for a donation as little as $5. And you do get something in return, you know, like at the $5 level, you'll get a monthly newsletter. And I also include a free song download of one of my songs every month up to, you know, $100 where you get all that kind of stuff, early access to my works, um, creative contributions to your works. You know, if you're looking for somebody to write a foreword for your book or play a guitar track for your album or whatever, you know, that's all stuff that I'm willing to do. Obviously, you can hire me to do it anytime, but I really like this idea of just saying, hey, I support artists, and so I'm going to make a small contribution. You know, I contribute to a lot of Twitch streamers at the $5 a month level just to support what they're doing. And so anyways, I'm going to try that out. And if you would like to support me, I'm going to launch this site in the next day or two. So if you're watching this video today, which is Thursday, be patient. Give me a couple days. I'll get the site up there. But I would really appreciate any support. And as always, another quick plug. I write books. They're available on Amazon. I don't do it for the money. I do it because I like to do what I like to do. And but if you want to support me, that's another way to do it. So I'm going to do another video today, I hope, and it's going to be a fun one. Fun for me, at least. I'm going to read my will to you guys, and because I find it amusing. Anyways, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go play with the dogs. I'm supposed to be getting lambs today. I need to check in on that, and I will put up another video. I'll record it today, but I'll post it tomorrow. So anyways, peace and love. I'll talk with you all soon.